The most influential action Mark Carney ever took was staying silent. Welcome to the secret history of currencies, where we dissect the hidden gears of global finance and the tremors they send through your world. It took only half a dozen words, 6 words delivered in the heart of the Oval Office, caught on film, aimed directly at the most transactional leader in American history. Those words are currently fueling a geopolitical fracture that Washington failed to anticipate, neglected to prepare for, and is now powerless to halt with simple rhetoric. We aren't looking at a minor trade tiff or a temporary diplomatic chill. What is currently happening between the United States and Canada is the intentional dismantling of the most deeply integrated economic partnership the modern world has ever seen. We are talking about $800 billion in annual commerce. We are talking about half a century of fused supply chains, shared defense grids, and intelligence networks, so mirrored that experts once compared decoupling them to performing open-heart surgery on a single living organism. Someone just made the first incision. Pay attention, because while the evening news paints this as a personality clash between two different styles of leadership, a massive structural shift is underway. This isn't something a quick summit or a polite press release will fix. The very foundation of North America is moving in silence, and almost no one is explaining the true cost to you. Let's look at the moment everyone witnessed but few actually decoded. On January 23, 2026, a post went live from the White House. There was no diplomatic lead-up, no State Department briefing, and no courtesy call to Ottawa. It was a blunt, one-way eviction notice. The Board of Peace was withdrawing its invitation to Canada. That was it. No reasoning provided, no path for negotiation, and no way for Canada to save face. It was a public, documented severing of an initiative Canada had already committed to, a project designed by the President himself to show global authority. Major outlets like Reuters and the BBC confirmed the move, but they all missed the subtext. The gravity was unjust in the act itself, but the method, public, sudden, and directed at a G7 ally that shares the longest undefended border on the planet. In the world of high-stakes diplomacy, when you want to demonstrate who holds the leash, you don't shout, you don't make threats, you simply remove something vital in broad daylight. Hit a nerve with surgical precision and then stop talking. This wasn't a tantrum, it was a calculated strike. A single pillar was pulled, and Canada was expected to sit in the dark, but the narrative didn't go as planned. Canada didn't flinch. To understand why, you have to understand why Canadians put Mark Carney in power for this exact moment at the secret history of currencies. We look past the titles to the history of the players involved. Carney isn't a product of a political party machine. He is a veteran of the global financial trenches, having run both the Bank of Canada and the Bank of England, the first non-Brit to do so in 3 centuries. He understands the plumbing of global wealth. He knows how leverage is built and how pressure is applied. He has spent his career at tables with the world's most powerful creditors, knowing that in those rooms words are currency. Canadians didn't vote for him because of a campaign slogan. They chose him because he possessed the cold economic logic and the psychological steel required to protect their sovereignty against the greatest external threat since the 1940s, when he stood in the Oval Office on May 6, 2025. He faced a president who brought up the idea of Canada becoming the 51st state, a notion first whispered about months earlier. Carney looked him in the eye and gave a 6-word epitaph to that idea. It is not for sale. Ever. He didn't use the padded, cautious language of a typical diplomat. He delivered a total, unyielding rejection on camera to the leader of the free world. It was a signal to the Canadian public, to global allies, and to every mid-sized nation watching to see if the world's superpower could simply bully its way through foreign policy. Washington heard the message, and they were far from pleased. Now we have to look at the actual machinery of this pressure, because this is where the abstract numbers turn into real pain for everyday people. The tariffs launched against Canada in early 2025 weren't just about trade protection. They were designed to break a structure. They targeted one specific vulnerability: 75%, that is, the portion of Canadian exports that flow south. That isn't a partnership, it's a total reliance in the theater of power. That kind of dependency is a target. The president said it clearly: the U.S. doesn't need Canada, but Canada needs the U.S. That wasn't an economic observation, it was a threat of leverage. The Bank of Canada's own reports warned that these moves would crush energy producers and drain the sector's profits. The Department of Finance admitted that these costs would trickle down to every kitchen table. risking thousands of jobs and making the entire continent less competitive. Note that phrasing "it hurts the continent," not just Canada. In a world of integrated manufacturing, you can burn your neighbor's house down without the smoke filling your own lungs. In the auto industry alone, parts cross the border so many times that a tariff is essentially a tax on a single car several times over a late 2025. Surveys showed that most Canadians felt this in their own wallets. It wasn't a spreadsheet issue anymore, it was a survival issue. Then in January 2026, the stakes were raised to 100% tariffs if Canada dared to trade with China. It was an ultimatum: your economic architecture will be designed in Washington or you will be walled off. Here is the sequence of events that the mainstream press buried. Just before the public snub on January 23, Carney gave a speech where he used a very specific word: rupture, not a disagreement or tension, but a structural break in the American-led global order. A rupture is permanent. It is a tear in the fabric that cannot be mended with a phone call. As a central banker, Carney knows the weight of his vocabulary. Hours after he spoke that word, the invitation to the Board of Peace was revoked. It was a direct response. Carney made the diagnosis of a broken system public, so Washington made the fracture public. It was two men playing a game of high-stakes leverage, both cold, both calculating. But behind the scenes, the clock was ticking faster than anyone knew. Internal assessments in Ottawa revealed that Canada wasn't dealing with months to fix this, but days. Economists warned the Carney government that they had a 21-day window to pivot their entire export strategy before the next wave of U.S. tariffs made any negotiation impossible. If the 100% tariff was locked in before Canada found new partners in India, Australia, or Japan, their leverage would vanish forever. That 21-day countdown explains why Carney didn't fly to D.C. to beg for a deal. He flew to New Delhi. He flew to Canberra. He was heading to Tokyo. This was on a photo op. It was a desperate race to build a new economic reality before the door slammed shut. By the time Washington realized the play, the move was already becoming permanent. As we speak in March 2026, Carney is in India with the explicit goal of ending Canada's total reliance on the American market. While the current trade volume with India is small compared to the U.S., giant the volume isn't the point. The architecture is, this is what the New York Times calls the middle power bond. These are nations, sophisticated, democratic, and militarily capable, that are tired of being used as pawns in a coercive American trade policy. Carney is stitching together a new network that doesn't have to pass through a Washington filter. If this succeeds, it will be the most significant shift in global alignment since 1945. This is the core mission of The Secret History of Currencies, revealing the new foundations of global power before they are set in stone. Think back to 1971. When Nixon hit the world with a 10% surcharge, Pierre Trudeau didn't panic. He quietly began diversifying. That surcharge lasted months. Today, we are over a year into this conflict with 100% tariff threats and talk of annexation on the table. There is no modern parallel for this. In every previous trade war, both sides wanted a solution. Today, when one side questions the very right of the other to exist as a sovereign nation, the usual diplomatic tools are broken. You can't negotiate a trade deal with someone who thinks you shouldn't be a country. The entire Canadian political class knows this, which is why Carney is in New Delhi and not the Oval Office. Yet this isn't a simple story of total separation. Even as the trade war rages, Carney recently backed U.S. military action regarding Iran. He is resisting on economics but cooperating on security. It's a sophisticated selective engagement strategy. He isn't cutting ties, he's rewriting the contract. He is showing Washington exactly which parts of the relationship are still functional and which are non-negotiable. It is a controlled repositioning designed to protect the country's dignity while maintaining its safety. No one is a hero here and no one is a villain. It is a cold calculation of leverage. The upcoming 2026 review of the USMCA trade deal will be the most dangerous moment in the history of North American commerce. Both leaders are trapped by their own rhetoric. Carney cannot concede without looking like a failure to the 50% of Canadians who now want a divorce from the American economy. The president cannot back down without looking weak to his base after making such public threats. The window for a peaceful resolution is incredibly narrow. We have less than a month before the review begins. And what happens in that room will define the continent for the next 30 years. There are three paths forward. We could see a fragile calm where advisors managed to engineer a face-saving retreat for both sides, leaving the relationship functional but permanently scarred by a total loss of trust. We could see catastrophic escalation, where 100% tariffs lead to Canadian retaliation against sensitive U.S. sectors, ending in a slow, painful decoupling that weakens both nations for decades. Or we could see the cold strategic reset scenario where Canada successfully builds its alternative trade network. Washington realizes its leverage is gone, and the two nations move from being best friends to being sophisticated counterparties. Neither enemies nor allies, but something far more distant. Whatever happens, the old world is gone. When Carney said those 6 words in the Oval Office, was he saving a nation's soul or signing its economic death warrant? Was it an act of legendary leadership or a collision with the hard reality of dependency? The truth is, it's likely both. National dignity is often expensive, security is often dangerous. This is the reality of power in the 21st century. The story isn't over, it has simply changed direction. Watch the trade agreements, watch the tariff decisions. Watch the silence. The next 30 days will decide the next 30 years. If this deep dive into the hidden forces of finance and power gave you a new perspective, your engagement is what keeps the secret history of currencies alive. Hit the like button, subscribe, and join us as we continue to track the signals that define our future. Tell us in the comments, do you think sovereignty is worth the price? I'll be looking for your thoughts. Thank you for watching and for looking deeper.